And this is why Hassan is so stupid about his entire take on this, because he has infinite sympathy for the people in Palestine and infinite charity to say no one in Palestine is remotely responsible for their action. When in reality, it's like, no, both sides have been conditioned by each other to behave in a very specific way that is often very destructive towards the other. Israel is just as much a product of its environment as is the Gaza Strip in the West Bank.
Welcome back, Hassan. Piker is still with me. Hassan, I want to just play you a clip of something that you said about the October 7th terror attacks, and in particular, the attack at the music festival, which killed 260 people.
Look at this guy. You know what shouldn't happen? Killing 260 people at a music festival. No, you're right, man. That just happened on its own because, like, bad guys wanted to do bad things. You're right. Dude, if they subjugated you to a open-air prison your whole life, you're going to break out eventually when you realize that there's no other way to get out of it.
I mean, it sounds to me there, Hassan, that you are in some way saying they had it coming. Were you?
No, I wouldn't say that they had it coming. I think that Michael Brooks used to say, analysis is not justification. And while obviously civilian casualties and horrific barbaric acts that were committed on October 7 are completely unacceptable, the important thing to make sure that it never happens again is to analyze what are the conditions as to how it happened to begin with. And I think Ehud Barak is going to be on in a little bit as well, or maybe he's on before me. Yeah. And I'm almost certain that while he has held the keys to the conversation and held the levers of the power in this conversation in many key and critical points, I would go so far as to say that he is among many others who also recognize that the Bibi Netanyahu administration is responsible. This is not just my assessment. This is 85% of the Israeli population's assessment at the time. This is years and years and years of refusing to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority. Don't take my word for it. Take Bibi Netanyahu's personal word for it. In 2019, in a closed-door conversation with Likud members, he said.
So we're gonna watch that clip, the rest of the clip that Piers put out, because it ends with Hassan just screeching like a psychopath. But
oh, really?
It's very fascinating, the psychology at play here, because Hassan says, you put all these people, and exactly what Akilan said, you put all these people in the open air prison, you put them in these bad material conditions, and therefore you should expect and anticipate that they're going to behave in this kind of like violent, brutal fashion. And he does this thing where even though he does say that he thinks that it was wrong and he doesn't support it, it kind of walks this weird line where he also doesn't say that Palestinians should, he refuses to say whether Palestinians should denounce or support Hamas, which I think is fucking disgusting and pathetically cowardly.
He's using the poverty causes crime narrative.
Yes,
he's basically
100%.
saying their material conditions are horrible, and they're going to lash out because of those material conditions, and that's crime.
Right.
When I think it's far more likely that these guys are just psychopaths, that's how they're maintaining their power, is through brute force.
Right.
And they're loving it. They're loving subjugating people.
But let's say that theoretically, let's say, I don't know, 20% of the population is psychopaths, right? Or something like, what, 30% of the population is like supposed to be authoritarian.
I thought it was 5% is psychopaths.
Okay, that's fine. So let's say 30% of the population is fine with authoritarianism, 5% are psychopaths, right? So that so we in America we have 5% of psychopaths too. In every country, 5% of the population is a psychopath. But there has to be specific environmental conditions that allow those psychopaths to go in to rise to the top levels of power, right?
Yeah, like in America, a lot of like surgeons could be psychopaths because they are able to cut people open without worrying about, without feeling things so like most of us feel.
A better way or the way that I would conceptualize it is like, okay, in a middle class or upper middle class society in America, it will be difficult, not possible, but it'd be far more difficult for a psychopath to rise to the top hierarchy of power somewhere. because of kind of the rules and culture of engagement that exist in middle and upper middle class life for most people. And it can still happen. They could still be surgeons, or they could become psychopathic
I
rulers
do
of
think we have a
companies.
lot of
Blah 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 blah. Right? That can still happen.
right.
But it's far easier in environments where there's a lower income situation, where there's a lot of rampant crime. It's far easier in that situation for a psychopath to rise to the top of a hierarchy of like a violent gang, because their natural proclivity completely aligns with the violence required to climb the hierarchy.
Right.
And so
Well,
I mean,
the institutions
yeah,
box in psychopaths. Like
Yes.
psychopaths don't want to be in prison. But I would argue that
Yes.
a lot of the people in prison are psychopaths.
they are.
right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but if someone who's a psychopath who doesn't really care about other people can be used in a social setting if there's certain jobs that are kind of, obviously like prosecutors, a psychopath could be useful for. But in a situation like Hamas, how are they useful in any other way than climbing some gang-like hierarchy?
They're not. They're
Yeah.
not. But see, but that's the whole thing is like, so the reason in middle and upper middle class cultures and societies, it's harder for the psychopath to rise. Not possible, but harder is because people, as you said, psychopaths don't want to follow the rules. They don't want to follow systems. They're psychopaths, but they also don't want to go to jail. But people that exist in that realm want to protect the existing structures of society. And so when they see the psychopath, if the psychopath behavior is alerted to them, they want to announce that to everyone and get the fuck away from the psychopath.
Right.
Being a psychopath in that situation is not viewed as a good thing. But if you're in a lower situation, a crime situation, you don't care about the structures and rules of society. You want to tear them down. And so the psychopathic behavior suddenly is a benefit as opposed to a penalty. And announcing that you're the psychopath can actually be beneficial too. And so if you relate that to the situation in Gaza, you say like, well, if the people broadly are living in a situation where they want everything torn down, where they don't want to protect any existing structure or society, then that makes it significantly easier for the psychopaths then to rise to the top levels of hierarchical power in that society.
Right. We've kind of drifted into how different societies deal with the psychopath problem, which is a constant, persistent problem in society.
Yes.
I think the problem with Hassan and a lot of people on the left, their analysis is that they don't think psychopaths exist.
Yeah.
Like they can't
They're taught
perceive
to be
of a world.
psychopaths.
Well, yeah. Well, they think everyone is basically good. They don't understand that there are people out there. They don't understand the old adage that man is a wolf to man, that there are people out there that want to subjugate and hurt people.
Right.
They think societal conditions put people into that situation. When I don't believe that. I think you have like 5% of the population wants to subjugate and take advantage of people and manipulate people and gain social status and wealth and fame by any means necessary. And how you deal with that 5% of the population is through various institutions in society. Now, if you have a place that's an authoritarian regime and the only way to gain status in society is through politics, then you're going to have the psychopaths basically controlling government. If you have a situation like the first world democracies, where you've got all these other routes to power, right? Start a business, sports, media, acting, making, arts, all these different ways that you can climb the hierarchy. It's not all based on might makes right politics. Does that make sense?
No, I agree completely. The idea that like the environment makes psychopaths. Well, first, I mean, to some extent, you can condition people to do horrific things to an extent.
I do think in situations of war, it's just like the psychopaths are willing to do horrible things.
No. Okay.
And the
We have
other
to be
95% wants to get out of the fucking way.
No. Okay. We have to be very clear here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In war, there are people that are not psychopaths that will do really fucked up shit and then will go back home and just be normal. If you put the human animal in certain situations, they can act horribly barbaric.
Right.
So we have to, so that exists. Okay. That
You can
definitely
force
exists.
people to do horribly barbaric things, but they're never going to, they're always going to feel bad about it. And a lot of the PTSD that our guys come home with is because they're
they
not
feel bad about it.
psychopaths.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
The problem is that you're correct that while the human animal can be put in situations in war and other situations where they do horrific shit, there still is, putting those people aside, there is some percentage of the population that are just psychopathic, evil people that's just who they are. Okay. In any situation.
They're going to be criminals.
And the problem is that a lot of people, specifically on the left, they assume that those people are just the people put in the war situation. They think, they don't understand that those people are just who they are.
We found it. Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly what's going on.
Right. And so the thing isn't that society creates the psychopaths. Society can create situations that put people, normal people, in situations where they behave badly. That definitely exists. But also, society can create situations where the psychopath thrives.
Right,
and that's
which is Gaza.
Right. And so there's a great line from one of your favorite movies, Sin City.
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
And it's where, I forget the actor's name, is in the bar, and he's looking at Marv. And he's like, Marv is a person who was born in the wrong era.
The wrong time.
Because if he was born back in like the Roman gladiator days, he'd be like some massive champion.
They'd be tossing women at him.
Exactly. He'd be so easy for him to climb the status hierarchy because he's so good at like murdering people. He's so great at it that in a different time period, that skill would have been so valued, right? But he doesn't live in that society, so the skill isn't valued. And it's kind of like the same thing that we're talking about with the psychopaths in Gaza, is that because of the environmental conditions that exist in Gaza, that skill set of being like brutal and psychopathic is actually valued.
Right.
And that allows
to society's detriment. I want to make one more point.
And also right.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I want to make one more point before we move on, just because. So in Gaza, like we can imagine like a businessman, someone who wants to climb the hierarchy by improving his community, right? He's going to open up a local shop that's going to import cheap products for all the poor people, right? Is that businessman going to be unmolested by the Gaza leadership?
Of course
I
not.
find it hard to believe that he's not, right? He's going to have to bribe them, pay them off, whatever. And that's just...
Let them store weapons in his base.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fundamental problem. Now, I mean, I would relate this back to insecure property rights. Like I've often said, property rights are the foundation of Western society, right? Obviously, Hassan disagrees with me. He's a socialist. But that businessman in Gaza, that hypothetical businessman that could improve the society, people are going to think this through before they go into business and try to improve society, because they don't have secure property rights. He knows whatever he builds, that the Gazan people in control, the might makes right psychopaths that are running the place, they can take whatever he builds away from him at any time, right?
Right.
That totally demotivates anybody from building anything valuable.
Of course.
See, this is the problem. You have to remove the leadership. And they're going to scream and holler. They're going to say, look, we were rightfully elected in 2006, almost 2 decades ago. And you've got Hassan. The Hassans of the world are just going to lap this nonsense up.
Yep.
It's a tough situation. Do you want to say anything else? Or?
Well, just because, again, he views it as it's so weird because he says in the clip that Piers played, where he's like, these people are put in this bad situation. What did you expect to happen? Right. That's kind of Hassan's position. It's super stupid, hypocritical, and ironic that he says that for the Palestinians, but he doesn't say that for the Israelis. Because the Israelis have the exact same situation.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
a
wait
great
a minute.
point.
You know, they pulled out the settlers, you know, in 2005. And if you remember, well, we didn't cover it, but you watched the conversation that Hassan had with Ethan, which I didn't finish, but I found very obnoxious. Because essentially that whole conversation is Ethan Klein saying, I understand the plight of the Palestinian people. I understand what Israel's doing wrong. But Hamas sucks, blah, 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 blah. Like he's kind of understanding the complexities of both sides. And all Hassan does is Israel bad, Israel bad, Israel bad, Israel bad, like a stupid, donkey. Like he can't move. He sees no nuance, no understanding, no complexity of the situation that Ethan is talking about. And at least the part of the conversation I saw, Ethan never calls him out for doing this in the first half of the conversation. It says, you're like a fucking idiot. That I'm able to see all this nuance and able to see both sides of the issue, and you're just a fucking idiot who's just, your brain has been rotted on Israel bad, and you're just simping for Hamas essentially in this conversation.
Yeah, Ethan does pretty good in that conversation.
Okay, I the part I saw he did not do. He was just letting Hassan walk all over him, and it was frustrating. So I couldn't watch the rest of it.
So you weren't. You were like, it's slow. Ethan is really taking baby steps with Hassan. Right. So right. I can
maybe it all
see
happens in the
frustrated.
second half, but I tapped out.
Well, no, he does eventually be like, what the fuck? What the fuck, dude? What the fuck?
Right. But
which I mean, you're feeling that the whole time.
The problem
Hassan is just making excuses. This is what's so infuriating. Hassan is literally making excuses for psychopaths.
Yes.
And trying to say, oh, we're responsible. Society created those psychopaths. This is why we got to change that meme, man.
Right. But in that conversation, Hila talks about how when she was growing up in the 90s, there was the travel restrictions between Israel and the Palestinian locations were far more lax. It was far easier for people to travel between the two countries. And she should have brought this up, and Hassan doesn't ask because he's an idiot and he doesn't actually care about what's true, is, well, why did Israel go from having much more laxer travel restrictions to the very stringent travel restrictions they have now? And
because they had a bunch of suicide bombers.
Exactly, because they had a bunch of suicide bombers. And this is why Hassan is so stupid about his entire take on this, because he has infinite sympathy for the people in Palestine and infinite charity to say no one in Palestine is remotely responsible for their actions because of their conditions, right? Of having, all these bad things happen to them. So they're completely off the hook. So he's going to defend them forever, infinitely. But for some reason, Israel doesn't get that, even though Israel has been subject to suicide bombing, has been subject to multiple wars throughout the years, has been subject to all these missiles being shot at them. And this is why this is kind of despicable, because the way Hassan frames the Israel situation to his audience, whether he says it explicitly or not, is that Israel is an evil state with people who are just doing evil things because they're evil. Hassan never actually gives a reason, not even justification. He never gives a single reason that I've heard in a single clip about why the Israeli people or the Israeli government is doing the things that they're doing. In Hassan's worldview, Israel and the Israeli government are just evil people that are just, I guess, psychopaths that just do whatever they do because they're evil. And all the Palestinians are like innocent lambs who have just been conditioned to do bad things. When in reality, it's like, no, both sides have been conditioned by each other to behave in a very specific way that is often very destructive towards the other. Israel is just as much a product of its environment as is the Gaza Strip in the West Bank. It's not like, when the first war started, when Israel was declared a country, okay, it's not like Israel just said, you know what, we're going to just be evil and take over Palestine because we hate them. No. Like the 5 surrounding countries and the Arab Palestinians in the area all attacked Israel. And that's basically been Israel's existence for since then. It's just been on this constant defensive of being attacked by shit tons of people are surrounding them. And so, does that justify them to do whatever they want? Of course not. But it's insanely insipid and fucking stupid to me that Hassan has infinite charity for one side of the conflict and zero charity, zero nuance, zero understanding for why the people in Israel, why the government in Israel behaves the way it does.
Yeah, it's so stupid to me. I don't know how they can handle, how they just live with these constant missiles being shot at them that they're shooting out of the air. Like if America had that going on, like if Canada wanted to randomly shoot missiles at our cities, or Mexico wanted to do that, we're fucking invading. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Just because we have the technology to shoot them out of the sky? No, fuck you. Fuck
Right.
you, Mexico. Fuck you, Canada. You're going to become the 51st state. The idea that this goes on and somebody can just say, oh yeah, that's just normal. The fucking nation next door shoots missiles at us randomly.
Right.
What the heck? How are we even having a conversation about this? Sometimes just like it blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you live like that?
Yeah. I mean, and I wish Hassan wouldn't be such a coward. I would love to talk to him about this, but he never will because we're not big enough. He can't cloud shark off us. But if you guys are having a conversation with someone who's like regurgitating Hassan talking points and they bring up the trade blockade, the open air prison, any of these things, you just ask
This is
them.
bullshit.
You just ask them, why is Israel doing that? Just ask them, why is Israel doing that? And they won't have an answer. They won't have an answer because
the open air prison stuff drives me fucking crazy, man.
Right.
It's so insane.
But
Look, that narrative exists. Let me be clear
I understand.
here. It's just, yeah. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.